Hello and welcome to the point editorial discussion by Neva. Here we are going to discuss the most exam relevant articles from the Hindu newspaper of 8 June 2024. Let's go into the articles. We have two articles for discussion today which are exam relevant. The first one is on the center state relations. To be more specific, the article is on the issue of financial devolution from central to state governments, which leads to multiple issues. That article will be discussed because it is relevant for us from the perspective of polity in GS2 paper of the mains. The second article is on informal waste and recovery sector. So this particular sector becomes an important theme under the environment conservation part in GS3 paper of the mains, and it also gives us a lot of keywords with related to prelims part of the environment section. Now let's go into the articles one by one. Starting with the first article, it deals with, as I said, central state relations, and it is relevant for us. This particular article is relevant for us from the perspective of mains because it gives us perspective more than facts. Let's focus on the issue of financial devolution. Financial devolution means in India, we have a federal polity. So there is a central government and a state government. So the state government contributes to the central pool of tax. This pool is then devolved by the central government to particular states. And there are certain criteria for that. We'll come into that. But the idea of financial devolution is the idea of disbursing funds from the central level to the local level. Now there are two ways in which funds are devolved in India. The first way is the Finance Commission recommendations. So a Finance Commission is a constitutional body that is constituted every 5 years, and they are a recommendatory body that will recommend the amount of money that has to be devolved from the central pool of taxes. They also give recommendations for granting aids as well. Based on that, the central government will devolve the funds. That's the first way. To understand the second way, you have to understand a political theory. That is, when we talk about a federal polity, we are talking about state governments and central governments. The state governments have their own territorial jurisdiction. But what about the central government? Do they have a territorial jurisdiction? The central, in fact, is a notional entity. It's not a real entity. The central government doesn't have a separate territory, which is separate from the states. So in a way, every expenditure that the central government is making has to take place in some state. Therefore, the devolution is actually taking place in the states itself, but it happens in the discretion of the center. But when it comes to the Finance Commission recommendations, it is based on fixed criteria like income inequality, like tax collection, all these things. But at the end of it, all these funds are going into the states itself. So these are the two ways in which the fund that is collected to the center is devolved into the state. Now, having understood this concept, we have to understand two particular issues. The first issue is that different states are at different stages of development. For example, if you take the case of Kerala, Kerala has attained a replacement level fertility rate, which is a demographic indicator, in the year 1998. Or if you take the social indicators of that particular state, or take Tamil Nadu for instance, it will be way higher than the social indicators like infant mortality rate in comparison to state like Bihar or UP. Or if you take other indicators, infrastructure per se, the northeastern states or the hilly states will lag behind states like Gujarat and Maharashtra. So it means different states are at different stages of development. So there will be always issues of financial devolution because there will be discrepancies. The second issue is different governments at the central and state. To use a political jargon, the double engine sarkar, that term is used to address this particular issue. Because suppose the party is ruling at the central level and the same party holds a government at the local level. So there is a accusation of systematic bias in fund devolution. There is an accusation of systematic targeting of opposition ruled states. This may or may not be true, but the accusation is always there, and that can be an issue. So having understood the concept and the issues with related to that, how do we deal with this issue? This is an important way forward that can be used for various answers of the mains with respect to sender-state relations and interstate relations, two are major topics under the polity. How do we go about that? The first thing is to have a consensus on the symbiotic relationship of different states. What do we mean by symbiotic relationship? We have talked about rich states, per se take Tamil Nadu or Kerala or Karnataka. One of the important acquisitions from the part of these states are when they contribute 1 rupee to the total tax pool, what they get back as the financial devolution is just 50 paise or below that. But we have to understand that these rich states are benefiting from the market that is being offered by the poor states. Even though that is an externality, that is a reality. So both are mutually beneficial. And this mutual symbiotic relationship has to be understood and a consensus based approach has to be taken place. That is the first point. The second point, we have to increase the finance commission devolution from 42%. Even though 42% is the recommendation, it is not always 42%. The actual devolution when it comes to the revised estimates will be below 42%. So I have told you anyway the rest 58% or 40% takes place in the states itself. But this 42% that is recommended by the Finance Commission is dispersed based on certain set targets. And those set targets can be used to avoid unnecessary issues. So if the limit of 42% is breached, maybe if it is made 60% or 70%, the fund can be devolved in a much more systematic way. That's the second point. Coming to the third point, it deals with joint decision making as equal entities. Equal entities means the central government should neither be superior to the state governments or state governments be subordinate to the central government. Something like the concept of a cooperative federalism. When they take decision as equal entities, there will be consensus based decision making. This is in the context of the center-state relations. The first point was in the context of interstate relations. On a whole, the issue of financial devolution and the associated issues can be dealt using this way forward. So I think the article as a whole gives you a clear perspective of the issue and value additions for the mains answer. Now let's come to the second article. The second article deals with informal waste and recovery sector. So informal waste and recovery sector is something that has to be understood in the context of environment conservation. I'll explain you one statistics that will place this sector in its right context. If we take the OECD Global Plastic Outlook, this is a stat that can be quoted for any answer on plastics or pollution. It says that global plastic production, to be specific, the global production of plastic waste was 353 million tons in the year 2019. Alright. The point is, it is set to triple by 2060. And the more important point is, only 9% of it is getting recycled. Here is where the informal waste recovery sector comes into the picture. The sector accounts for 85% of the recycling works. So without this sector, only 15% of the plastic waste can be recycled. A complementary statistics is given by UN Habitat, which says that 85% of the municipal solid waste recovery, municipal solid waste recovery, not recycling, is done by the informal sector account. So on a whole, the informal waste and recovery sector is key to any policy in this aspect. Now we have to be familiar with another international convention on this regard, which is the Global Plastic Treaty. I'll put this in the context. First, let's understand what is the Global Plastics Treaty. Global Plastics Treaty aims for a legally binding treaty to eliminate plastic pollution. So as of now, we don't have a legally binding treaty with respect to plastic pollution. And this particular treaty was constituted in the United Nations Environment Assembly, and they have formed an intergovernmental negotiations committee to deal with this. This committee will have meetings at regular intervals and they will finalize the treaty. And now the fifth intergovernmental negotiation committee meeting is going to happen in South Korea. This committee was set up in 2021 at Nairobi in UN Environment Assembly, the fifth UN Environment Assembly to be specific. And the fifth intergovernmental negotiation committee meeting is going to be held in South Korea. Now, this is where the informal waste sector comes into picture, because there is an association called International Alliance of Waste Pickers. As we have seen, 85% of the informal recycling of plastic waste is done by this sector, and this organization acts as a coordinating force, the International Alliance for Waste Pickers. They are being an active participant in the fifth INC. And their major demand is the formalization of the workforce, the 85% involving workforce. So we can expect a major decision from the INC with respect to informal waste and recovery sector. And one value addition I can give you is that India's stand with respect to the INC is that the approach, whatever it is, should be country specific in nature. One size fits all won't work. So from this article, we have some important statistics and some insights into a global treaty, and we have an idea about the informal waste recovery sector. That's all from it. That's all from the Hindu today. I hope it was productive for you. Thank you for listening.